So when Sephiroth and Cloud go to Nibelheim and we see that flashback, there's a lot to discuss there musically, which I think is really, really interesting. This reunion with Cloud's home is not a good one. And one of the reasons why we hear that is this music here. Nibelheim has this quality in its music that is very somber, very uneasy, almost like things don't feel like they should. There's an essence in this music of discomfort, of unrest. That coupled with really the whole interaction between Sephiroth, who's sort of bored and jaded a bit being a soldier in this experience of Cloud, he's much more eager, much more excited to go home, to help out with the Shinra reactor, to be a part of Soldier, to enjoy this mission. And, you know, at this point, Sephiroth is a hero. He's used to accolades and success, and I mean, they fight a giant dragon, for fuck's sake. And, like, you know, Sephiroth doesn't even flinch. In fact, the fire lights him up and it does 0 damage, and then he just destroys him. You know what I mean? Like, Sephiroth is sort of tired, and he's like, whatever. So as we move forth into Nibelheim, I think it's really that upper register, that melody that is so common in Final Fantasy music, but certainly in Final Fantasy VII, which feels like a real, like, apex of composition when it comes to Uematsu's compositions. It's just such a somber quality to that music, especially in the upper strings. If you listen to it here. And by strings, I do mean harp, and the strings are supporting that harp there in that lower register. But I find that the whole thing is just fascinating. This Nibelheim sequence with Cloud and with Sephiroth, and Sephiroth discovering his true identity. This is a paramount moment, I think, in Final Fantasy VII, probably the most important moment in the game. But I love how, as we step into this flashback, nothing about this, right as we start, is optimistic. Now, you could also say that the music symbolizes the fact that monsters are now invading Nibelheim, all the things that are happening up in that Shinra reactor up there at the top of the mountain, the way that it requires us to get to the top of the mountain, all that is very, very heavy, fraught with danger and with, you know, risk and concern and things like that. But it's really not, to me, until Sephiroth finds out the truth, that things shift. Like, in reality, we don't think much of this music. As this music exists, it's essentially as Cloud is walking into the underground, the basement of Shinra Mansion, there is this feeling of the overworld theme, if I recall correctly, or it's the Junon theme. I can't remember now. Hold on. What's interesting to me about this is that this is a different variation on the overworld theme. It's pitched higher. It feels a little bit more almost like Cloud wants to support Sephiroth in this moment musically. You know, he says, I'll go in and I'll find him, I'll talk to him, right? There's almost a quality of listlessness in here. The harp makes it feel like there is a sense of discovery, a sense of understanding, a sense of exploration. As we cross through this very disturbing corner, there's a lot of honesty in Cloud in this music. Like, hey, I want to help Sephiroth. And Sephiroth sitting here and he's reading everything and he's hyper analyzing everything. He's reading every book possible. He's uncovering. It's not malicious in this moment. It's actually quite like, oh, what happened? Who am I? What is going on? I have to understand this. The overworld theme takes a turn with dissonance right there. It's a bit unnerving, that slight dissonance. And as we see Sephiroth start to put pieces together, Professor Gast, why didn't you tell me anything? Why did you die? You feel, in a way, sad for Sephiroth. And the music does such a great job of highlighting his sort of feeling of being lost. He tells Cloud to go away. Let me be alone. He's wrestling with his own thoughts and fears and sadness. Cloud then tells us that Sephiroth never came out of that mansion. And as we see this time lapse, we see him reading through every book, and we hear musically his sense of, who am I? Everything I've known or believed is a complete lie. And it's not until we get to here that we understand that now there's a shift. That beating pattern, that beating drum. Now we hear the change. Now we hear the change in Sephiroth. Now everything has become clear to him. Who he really is. Who he perceives himself to be. What he perceives us to be as traitors. The church bell being the only musical instrument that we really hear here, besides maybe the timpani or the lower brass. And this is the moment, and I think that the music in this particular moment highlights the shift beautifully. This is the shift in the game when everything changes. When we start to see Sephiroth as a character, to see him turn, to see him deviate from that tired, sort of bored soldier into what he becomes. And then we get silence. Genius. Out of my way. I'm going to see my mother. And that's when we get the chorus. This particular chorus highlights Jenova, highlights that now Sephiroth is completely gone, and it highlights the brutality when we step outside of Shinra Mansion. And that crunching tension there. The Sephiroth that we idolized is gone. And in a lot of ways, this moment and this theme, this is Sephiroth's true theme. Not One-Winged Angel. This. And all the things that follow in this game, that scene is the scene that causes everything to shift. And musically, that's when we see Sephiroth, and that's when we hear Sephiroth turn into what he becomes. So while One-Winged Angel is, of course, one of the best pieces of video game music ever written, objectively, this corner is actually more interesting musically because of how little music there actually is. That repeated pattern works unbelievably well at highlighting the big shift And when Sephiroth says, I'm going to see my mother, and we shift like that, that's exciting stuff musically. At first, I didn't fully understand the hype around Final Fantasy VII, but as I've been rewatching it in preparation for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, I realized how wrong I was. Final Fantasy VII is amazing. And there's good reason for that. And there's a good reason for why it's been remade. If you like this, there's more on the channel. Feel free to like, subscribe, and as always, thanks a ton, and I'll see you later.